All right, we'll call this Committee of Adjustment meeting to order this evening. Let me just go through the procedures for tonight's meeting. As we go through, we'll make sure that each member of the committee is connected and their microphones are on. I think we've already been through all of that, so I've heard them all. Tonight we have one application that we'll be hearing, and the following will be the procedure for tonight's meeting. Copies of notices have been sent to neighboring property owners, and signs been posted, as well as the Committee of Adjustment on the web page at the City Hall. The order of business for tonight will be asking if there's any conflicts of interest with any of the applications this evening from the members, as well as any requests for deferrals or withdrawals of applications on the agenda. The committee secretary-treasurer will read out each application on the agenda and provide a brief description and staff recommendation, and include any additional comments that might have been received since the time of writing of the report. The applicant or the agent will be asked to introduce themselves and provide any additional information outlining that they like to bring up at that time. Members of the committee will then have the opportunity to ask the applicant any questions that they might have, and members of the public have been encouraged to submit written correspondence and or contact staff to be able to get into the meeting. I don't believe there's any this evening. So that may or may not be an issue. Following that, the applicant will be afforded some closing comments if they so desire. The committee will then present a decision in the form of a motion. The motion will be discussed and voted upon. If the vote is tied, a motion will be defeated and a new motion will be made. This procedure will continue until we've made a decision. Should be noted that notices of decision will only be provided to those persons who leave their name and address with the Secretary-Treasurer and the Planning Division. They can contact David Schultz at planner@portcolborne.ca or leave a voicemail at 905-835-2901 extension 202 immediately following the meeting if they would like to receive a written notice of decision. In order to be advised of any possible LPAT tribunal meetings, you must request to be sent a copy of the committee's decision. So that's the procedure for this evening. Like I noted, we only have one applicant this evening. So I'll just go through. Is there any requests declarations of conflict with any of the committee members this evening? Not seeing any. I'm assuming there's no motion to withdraw or request to withdraw from the applicant. He was on there earlier. Maybe you can bring him in now if you want, since there's only the one. There we are. I'm assuming you don't want to withdraw your application this evening?
No, I do not.
All right. Very good. So with that, Mr. Secretary, the first application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first application is application number B06-20-PC for 77 Welland Street by the owners Frank and Daniela Grisick. In the matter of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, Section 53(1), and in the matter of the property legally known as Lot 7 and part of Lot 6 on Plan 843, of the east side of Welland Street in the city of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 77 Welland Street, and in the matter of an application by the owners Frank and Daniela Grisick for a severance under Section 53 of the Planning Act, so as to permit the conveyance of Part 1 having a lot frontage of 12.40 meters with a total lot area of 537 meters squared on Welland Street for a future residential use. Part 2 will retain a lot frontage of 14.32 meters on Welland Street with a total lot area of 570 meters squared for a continued residential use. Comments from the Planning Department. The planning staff has reviewed the referenced application and offer the following comments. For public comments, notice was circulated on October 27th, 2020, and no written response correspondence has been received at the time. For agency comments, the application and notice was circulated by October 27th, 2020, and the following written correspondence has been received at this time. So from the Niagara region, Based on the analysis and comments, Regional Planning and Development Services staff offer no objection to the proposed consent application. We have comments from the Building Department. The proposed southern lot line would be 1.7 meters from the existing dwelling. The south-facing elevation of the existing dwelling, which contains glazed window openings, may need to be brought into compliance with subsection 9.10.14 or 9.10.15 of the Ontario Building Code with regard to spatial separation. Spatial separation calculations must be prepared and submitted to the chief building official for review. A building permit will be required to undertake the work required to achieve compliance if necessary, or a spatial separation agreement may be necessary to accommodate the existing conditions. Alternatively, the proposed lot line could be relocated such that the 1.7 meter setback is increased to a distance suitable to permit the retention of the existing windows. It is preferable that the calculations be prepared by a qualified designer, architect, or engineer. The Planning Division comments are as followed. It is the opinion of the Planning Division that the application for consent is consistent with the official plan because residential uses are supported in the urban residential designation, and the requirements of policy 3.2.4 have been satisfied subject to meeting the requested conditions. The subject property is zoned third density residential. The R3 zone permits detached, semi-detached, duplex, triplex, fourplex, and townhouse dwellings with uses, structures, and buildings accessory thereto. For new lots in the R3 zone, lots must have a minimum frontage of 12 meters and a minimum lot area of 400 meters squared. The owner has requested a severance of this nature, and the lots will be sufficient in size. Therefore, staff are satisfied that this application meets the general intent of the zoning bylaw. Staff would like to note two minor issues that will need to be resolved prior to the final certification of consent being issued for the property, should the committee wish to approve this application. Specifically, the location of the stairs for the wood deck attached to the rear of the existing dwelling and the driveway for the existing parcel to be retained will need to be addressed. Therefore, staff are recommending that the following conditions be included in any decision or approval. Number one, that the owner obtains a municipal consent permit to establish a new parking area for part two to the satisfaction of the engineering department and planning division. And number two, that the owner obtains any necessary permits from the building division to move the staircase from the existing wood deck on part two to an alternative location to the satisfaction of the planning and development department. Overall, besides the above recommended conditions, planning staff does not have any major concerns with this consent to sever application. Given that the proposed severance conforms to the City of Port Colborne official plan and zoning bylaw, staff recommends approval to the application. As for recommendations, it's recommended that application B06-20-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the owner obtains a municipal consent permit to establish a new parking area for part two to the satisfaction of the engineering department and planning division. Number two, that the owner obtains any necessary permits from the building division to move the staircase from the existing wood deck on part two to an alternative location to the satisfaction of the planning and development department. Number three, that the existing structures located on part one be demolished and that any necessary demolition permits be obtained from the building division. Number four, the proposed southern lot line would be 1.7 meters from the existing dwelling. The south-facing elevation of the existing dwelling, which contains glazed window openings, may need to be brought into compliance with subsection 9.10.14 or 9.10.15 of the Ontario Building Code with regard to spatial separation. Spatial separation calculations must be prepared and submitted to the chief building official for review. A building permit will be required to undertake the work required to achieve compliance if necessary, or a spatial separation agreement may be necessary to accommodate the existing conditions. Alternatively, the proposed lot line could be relocated such that 1.7 meter setback is increased to a distance suitable to permit the retention of the existing windows. It is preferable that the calculations be done by a qualified designer, architect, or engineer. Number 5, that the owners submit a letter to the city indicating that they are aware of the requirements of bylaw 4748 I think this might be a typo, 30-05, which requires the collection of the parkland dedication at the time of the building permit application based on the value of the property the day before issuance of the permit, and that they will advise any future purchasers of this requirement. Number 6, that the applicant provides the Secretary Treasurer with the deeds in triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel or a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a paper and digital copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. Number 7, that a final certification fee of $208 payable to the City of Port Colborne be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. Number 8, that all conditions of consent be fulfilled by November 10th, 2021. So those recommendations for the following reasons. Number 1, the application conforms to the policies of the Regional Official Plan, City of Port Colborne Official Plan, and the provisions of the zoning bylaw 657530-18 as amended. And number 2, the decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of subsection 5124 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13. There are no public comments that were received, and that is the end of the correspondence.
Thank you. I see Donna has joined us, so we'll just touch base with Donna, make sure we can hear. I can see her.
I could hear and see you, but I'm glad you can finally see me. Thank you.
And just before we continue, you don't have any conflicts with tonight's application?
None, thank you.
Thank you. So the applicant is online there. Is there anything you'd like to add at this point in time?
No, I have no objections.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant this evening from any of the members? Not seeing anything.
Sorry, did you ask me a question?
No, I'm just seeing if any members, committee members wish to ask you any questions. And I don't see any, and we don't have any public comments to add. So I'll look for one of the members to present a motion. Eric?
Just 1 second, I just got to pull it up. Okay. That consent application B06-20-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. That the owner obtains a municipal consent permit to establish a new parking area for Part 2 to the satisfaction of the Engineering Department and Planning Division. That the owner obtains any necessary permits from the Building Division to move the staircase from the existing wood deck on Part 2 to an alternative location to the satisfaction of the Planning and Development Department. 3, that the existing structures located on Part 1 be demolished and that any necessary demolition permits be obtained from the Building Division. 4, the proposed southern lot line would be 1.7 meters from the existing dwelling. The south-facing elevation of the existing dwelling, which contains glazed window openings, may need to be brought into compliance with subsection 9.10.9.10.14 or 9.10.15 of the Ontario Building Code, brackets regulation 332/12, Division B, close bracket, with regard to spatial separation. Spatial separation calculations must be prepared and submitted to the chief building official for review. A building permit will be required to undertake the work required to achieve compliance if necessary, or a spatial separation agreement may be necessary to accommodate the existing conditions. Alternatively, the proposed lot line could be relocated such that the 1.7 meter setback is increased to a distance suitable to permit the retention of the existing windows. It is preferable that the calculations be prepared by a qualified designer, architect, or engineer. 5, that the owner submit a letter to the city indicating that he or she is aware of the requirements of bylaw 4748/130/05, which requires the collection of the parkland dedication at the time of the building permit application based on the value of the property the day before issuance of the permit, and that she will advise any future purchasers of this requirement. 6, that the applicant provides the secretary treasurer with the deeds in triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel of a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a paper and digital copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. 7, that a final certification fee of $208 payable to the City of Port Colborne be submitted to the secretary treasurer. 8, that all conditions of consent be fulfilled by November 10th, 2021. for the following reasons. Number one, the application conforms to the policies of the regional official plan, City of Port Colborne official plan, the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. Two, this decision is rendered having regard to the revisions of subsection 5124 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13.
Thank you. Did I get a seconder to that? Angie, any questions or comments? Just to the applicant, that additional requirement that came in late about the that minimum separation distance and the window, you understand what that all means?
Yes, I do. I have no objections to any of it.
Okay. The other thing too, I don't know if you've seen a copy of the regional report in full. There was a comment about garbage collection in there that kind of raised my eyebrow. That basically said the new lot was limited to 1 bag every 2 weeks.
Yep, I understand that as well. Yep.
Well, we contacted the region. That's not actually true. It's 2 bags every 2 weeks, just like everywhere else in the city and the region.
Oh, okay.
So, just
That's
so
great.
you know.
Thank you.
I don't know if that was a slip on their part or a typo or whatever, but it is 2 bags every 2 weeks. So with that being said, any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you. Just going back to... Sorry, I just got to get back to my meeting minutes. So with that, is there any other business that anyone has? Eric?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee, I'm just wondering if the committee at all has any objections to the committee taking on other sort of applications that are not necessarily minor variances or consents. For example, potentially taking on fence variance applications or sign bylaw applications. The Planning Act does allow a committee of adjustment to take on those in so long as they have they enforce the official plan in some capacity. And these are examples of some type of bylaws that we can take on. So I'm just looking for some comments.
Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, thank you, Eric, for bringing that forward. I'd heard that in a past conference a number of years ago. I think my concern would be that it's vetted through planning. I'm not so sure that those applications are fee-based applications or they can become fee-based applications. Not that that's prima facie the big issue, but I didn't want, it would certainly help the flow at council. But I think the council would want to hear that in terms of, I think, Eric, more that citizens' right to be heard by the council, as opposed to a committee that is smaller in this case. I think from an efficiency point of view, I think it would be tremendous. But I'd like to hear some staff comments and perhaps other members here.
Anybody else? As far as comments, Gary, if you're looking from my perspective, doesn't matter to me. I guess the other key thing, like you say, you'd need staff comments, and you'd probably need to amend the bylaw that struck the committee to address those issues, to be able to delegate that as long as it's within the Planning Act to do that. But or just be an expanded duties of this committee. But yeah, other than that, it's really, I serve at the pleasure of the council. So whatever they decide is good with me. Angie, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I did. I would. I actually have no issue with that at all. I think it would be far more efficient. But I really would like to hear staff's take on this, and I would like to have this discussion in council. I just think that would be the place for it. But I think that you've brought up an interesting thing here, Eric. I think it's the right way to go, maybe.
All right, very good. Anybody else? Other business? Eric.
Through your worship, another item I want to bring to the committee's attention is that so I'm involved with OCA right now in terms of I'm taking a course with them, and that's kind of where this came from because I learned about that the Committee of Adjustment and some of the powers that they have outside of just the regular minor variances and consent applications. But another thing that came to my attention is that procedures. Usually committees of adjustments have their own procedures separate from that of council, and we don't. And when I spoke to some of the people in OCA and saying that we don't have those procedures, or even the fact that, you know, when we read out motions, we read out the whole thing, that is in fact like a very old style way of doing things, and you should have, and all committees of adjustments should have their own procedures. So I think that's something I would like this committee to eventually, and now that we got a new secretary treasurer and a new planner, can take on maybe in the new year. So I would be interested in some comments on that as well.
I don't see any hands raising. Again, the only thing I would, probably what the other councillors are going to raise is that it's really a council directive. I don't think it comes from the committee to staff or to council. It'd be council's directive to the committee and staff to make that happen. But I don't disagree with having a protocol. I thought we had started once upon a time down that path to set something up, but I'm not sure where it ended up after that. Angie, I think I've seen your hand, and Gary.
Yes, it's funny that you should say this, Eric, because while the decision was being read out, I thought, you know, we really need to stop repeating the same thing 3 times through one hearing. It's just a waste of time. But and I do remember taking some training with OACA at the last conference I attended. And again, they were saying the same thing. They all do have their own procedures, and they're far more streamlined than ours. So I would be supportive if anybody wanted to take this to council, whether it be staff-driven or we as members could drive it. But certainly, if we want to take this to council, I would be happy to support our procedures being revisited and streamlined and modernized, at least.
Gary, did you want to add to that?
No, Mr. Chair, that's exactly what I was going to add in terms of streamlining that repetitive nature of at least reading out decisions, as well as any other opportunities which I think new policies and procedures could avail themselves of. Thank you.
Donna?
I just, through you, Mr. Chair, I agree. I think that it's time to streamline much better ways to do things a lot quicker, but still maintaining the integrity of the group. And I think it can be done very well. And thanks for bringing it up, Eric.
All right. Eric, you had your hand again.
Yes, I'd be happy to share an example of a procedural bylaw for a committee of adjustment. It's one that was given to me by my course instructor right now. I asked her, because she's been involved in as a planner in a capacity for apparently 30 years and was in the city of Toronto. So I decided to ask her for some of her thoughts and what might be a good template. And so the City of Vaughan's Committee of Adjustment is the one that she gave me, and I'd be happy to circulate that, or I guess you can also go and look it up on the website if you'd like.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Gary?
While we're on efficiency, I'd love for you to forward it, Eric, than me looking it up on the website. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Nope.
I'm not seeing any. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the minutes from our October 14th meeting? Angie, Gary, any questions or comments? All in favor? Be carried. And motion to adjourn. Angie, Gary, all in favor? I'll be carried. Thank you all. We'll see you again next month. I think we have at least one application, but we have lots apparently. So
It'll be a busy one.
we'll see you all next month. Thank you.